Hello, this is Johnny from Eurogamer. I am joined by a slightly jet-lagged Ollie Welsh, who is fresh back from GDC, where you played, well, a whole bunch of things, but also Below, the adventure game, right?
Yeah, so Below is like I don't know what you're supposed to call it. I think Capybara call it a roguelike.
Okay.
Some other people call them roguelites. It is it's got some similarities to roguelike games in that you start afresh with a new character each time you die. But it also has, it feels quite a lot like playing a top-down Zelda game in some ways. And it's got a nice balance between action gameplay and some slightly more hardcore elements. And it's really pretty as well.
Okay, because I've seen quite a lot of footage actually online, but it's quite hard to get a sense of what exactly it is or what you do, more to the point.
Well, that's partly deliberate because Cappy my demo was from Nathan Vella, who's the co-founder there at Capybara, and he was telling me that they're really, really keen to get a sense of exploration. They mean that in the true word, and they want you to be exploring the landscape. They want you to be exploring the game as well. The only instruction in the game is a controller map, which it is possible to bring up.
Okay.
But they don't even tell you how to do that. There's no button prompts. You have to you start by exploring the controller and figuring out what does what. Excuse me. And then you start exploring your inventory and figuring out how you can use the things in it whilst you're exploring the space of the game. So it's a deliberately enigmatic game. It's also quite simple. I think they call you a wanderer. You enter a dungeon entrance. You start sailing your boat up to a beach, you tie it up, you wander onto the island, you find an entrance, and then you go down, and that is it, basically.
Okay.
You plumb the depths of like a series of caves and dungeons.
Right.
It's more of rather than dungeons, I guess caves is a better description, because they want it to feel like a sort of biome, a sort of underground ecology that you're wandering into and exploring, and interacting with as well.
Sure.
And yeah, you're trying to make progress further and further into the game by wandering around and exploring these procedurally generated levels, and getting a little further each time on each life. So the progress model, I think, is probably best compared to Dark Souls, or maybe even more accurately, the first Demon Souls, in that it's about getting a certain distance forward and finding a shortcut which you can unlock from the inside.
Okay.
So that on subsequent lives it will be quicker for you to move through.
Okay, sure. How does that work with a procedurally generated environment, though? If you're unlocking shortcuts in something that's made afresh every time.
So I think they've got certain things which will always be in the same place, always in roughly the same place.
Okay.
My question for this was not about the shortcuts, it was about the corpse run. So when you die, you drop everything that you have with you.
Right.
Including there's a really vital item called the magic lantern, which is the only really sort of magical item in the game, and it's powered by gems, and it lights the world around you. And light is crucial because the game has fog of war, which is revealed by light, and also it's just really dark.
Yeah.
And so you need the lantern to be able to see. You get torches as well, which you can burn through. But the lantern's really crucial because it reveals traps and it will show you other things in the game as well.
Okay.
So you will need to get to your corpse to retrieve the magic lantern, also any weapons or particularly good items that you had on you. And yeah, your corpse will always be on the same floor, and it will be sort of roughly where you found it. So if it was in the bottom right of that floor, then it will be in the bottom right.
Okay, all right.
But the each floor is made up of rooms which you are revealed slowly in a map. It's quite a traditional, old school graphic adventure game in that way, in that it's like rooms that connect together.
Okay.
And yeah, you're sort of aiming in a rough direction.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like it's got that same tension and that sense of fear that you get with not getting back to your corpse in Dark Souls. But all of the footage I've seen, it looks like a very calm, almost meditative kind of game. What's the pace of it like?
Yeah, it's quite slow, but combat is quite tricky. It has a very, very strong influence from 2D Zelda games, and that will give you a feel for what the combat is like. You're sort of using a shield and poking your sword out from behind it, or using arrows and so on. The difference is that there's twin stick controls, so you aim your character, as it were, with the right stick, and then move with the left, which allows you to strafe and to retreat while attacking as well, which are not things you can do in Zelda.
Sure.
But if you think of it as like the sort of tougher encounters in a 2D Zelda game, like even a small enemy can catch you unawares. And where it gets unlike Zelda is if an enemy with a sharp attack hits you, you then bleed out.
Ah, okay.
So you then need to either make a bandage, which means you need to have the items, you need to make a bandage, you need to have also discovered what those are yourself and how to make it.
Got it.
Or you need to get to one of the sort of torches that are scattered around each level, which allow you to light areas and have sort of safe light areas, and also you can stick your sword in them and use them to cauterize the bleeding, which doesn't heal you but just stops you from bleeding.
Stops the damage. Okay. This might be a good time then to jump into the crafting system, or what I've gleaned is kind of a crafting system from the footage I've seen.
Yeah.
Did you explore much of it? How deep does it go, do you reckon?
So it's not. It's relatively simple, but it doesn't stack, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
It's not built around incremental growth. This is the way Nathan put it to me. So it's just about finding a combination of items in your backpack that works. And for food, for example, you can eat raw food, you can eat mushrooms, whatever you find around, to regain some health. But you will find more powerful foods that regains more health, or that maybe buffs you by cooking, which you can do at campfires, which are special, more powerful fires, which I think you only get one of those per floor.
Got it.
And yeah, so I didn't get that far into it, but it's basic, but it's about combining ingredients really, and there'll be a lot of experimentation to do in that, and I imagine that's where the community is going to do a lot of knowledge sharing as they get into the game. It's based around discovering crafting recipes.
Sure. So from a lot of what you said, especially about the campfires and the torches and everything, it seems like light and dark is like a major mechanic in this game, especially with the footage looking really dark anyway.
Yeah.
That seems to play into like some of the enemies at least. Like, is there like a lore reason behind it, or
I don't know. Is the short answer, and the lore itself is again something that they want to be is definitely present in the game, but is never as Nathan put it. We're definitely trying to say something, but we're not saying it to you.
Got it. Okay.
So, there's, as far as I could tell, there's no text in the game whatsoever.
Okay. And
it's entirely icon based, and so I think it's going to reveal itself to you, like even more subtly than a game like Fez, for example, which definitely has a worldview, but it's extremely enigmatic, and you need to sort of figure it out as you go along.
This is sounding more and more like a roguelike as we go.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely there, but also I think the game has a simplicity to it as well that you probably shouldn't overlook. It can be as simple as you are an adventurer and you're going down into a dungeon and it's dark because it's going to be dark, and it's dark because that's kind of the theme and the mood of the game. Mm-hmm. It's worth pointing out as well, as you can tell from the footage, your character is tiny. That's very much the look that they're going for. It's to give it that sense of scale, even though it's a 2D game, to give you that sense of being dwarfed by the environment. I think it's going to play beautifully on really big TVs, and it's going to play beautifully in its PC version on a nice big monitor that you can press your face up against. But if you've got a smaller TV, you might actually be squinting at it a little bit. So
obviously it's looking quite good now, but this game was revealed quite a long time ago. Why isn't it already something people own?
The original trailers looked much like the game you see at the moment.
Right.
So yeah, it was revealed back in 2013 with the first Xbox reveal at E3, I think it was, and it was at the time it was an Xbox One exclusive. Now it's probably a timed exclusive on console and will be releasing simultaneously this summer on Steam. Mm-hmm. I asked Nathan why the game had taken them so long to put together, and he told me that they knew they were revealing early, but they were off by a fair factor for how early it really was.
Right.
I think they were making a more complex game than they really realised. It's got a series of complex systems, including stuff like crafting that overlap. But the big one, I think, was probably getting the procedural generation right. They hadn't made a game like that before, and it's very challenging. And Cappy as well are very, very keen on getting the aesthetic of the games just so, and they didn't want the procedural generation to step on the artist's work. So they came up with this idea of artist-driven procedural generation, so that it always had the right look and the right feel, and the right pace to it. And it turned out that was an extremely tough challenge for them to get right. And then also the size of the character was something that they spent a really long time on, because they really decided they wanted this tiny character, but getting the light and the focal planes and everything right, so to ensure that you don't lose the player in the overall display, was a big challenge for them. Also, as he says, it's relatively long. It's quite big for a small indie team to make a game like this. So whilst it looks simple on the screen, I think it's probably got a fair bit of heft to it.
I can imagine, yeah. I mean, I was surprised when I found out it was procedurally generated, because it looks so great that you almost think that kind of level of like art design cannot be consistent with something that's just thrown together by an algorithm.
But it's pretty crucial, I think, to making a game with that roguelike style work, because I mean, I asked how they felt they were going to get the level of progression versus frustration right, so you feel like you're making progress, but you also got that it's a setback when you die, and you know it's a big challenge. But they said that procedural generation does a lot for you, because it means you don't feel like you're retreading old ground.
Got it.
And I think they're very keen, unlike the sort of harder end of roguelikes, to make sure that you feel like you have you're constantly moving. Your goal is constantly changing and constantly moving forward as you play the game.
Sure.
It played really beautifully, I've got to say. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed how kind of tense the combat was. I enjoyed the mood of it, and I eventually, when I played it, I died of thirst because I couldn't find any fresh water to drink, and so it definitely has, like, it's. In some ways, structurally, it's on the more casual end, but it's definitely got an edge to it where you really, like, thirst and hunger are issues. Mm-hmm. And when you start bleeding and you don't have the materials to make a bandage, and you're trying to find a fire to cauterize yourself in as your health gradually bleeds away, it's definitely got some tension to it. So I think it's quite exciting.
I have heard it is difficult on the GDC show floor to keep going, but well, thank you very much for talking to us about Below.
No worries.
And yeah, great. Thanks for watching.
I have a remarkably little understanding of what you guys actually do day to day. You've been doing game development for a while now, right? How long have you been a game developer?
22, it's 2016, 22 years.
All right, that sounds like a good chunky time. 25?
Yeah, so you were 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, right, in my mind, this is how game development works. I know at some point you guys probably have a concept, but you don't tell anyone about that.
That's right.
You just begin.
You get in trouble when you do that.